Horse Show is brought to you by EquestrianCollections.com, featuring the latest collections of top equestrian brands like Asmar, Keritz, Iridian, Ovation, and Equine Couture. Shop on Equestrian Collections and you and your horse will always ride in style. Hello and welcome to the Horse Show. I'm Chris Stafford. For more than 2 decades, Katie Prudent was one of show jumping's most successful riders. In the first ever FEI World Cup final in Gothenburg, Sweden in 1979, she finished second after tying for first place with Hugo Simon before losing a jump-off to him. She then went on to ride in 5 more finals in the 1980s. Katie dominated that decade of the 80s as few other riders have been able to do. She was selected for the 1980 US Olympic team, but was denied the chance to compete because of the US boycott. She was named the American Grand Prix Association's Rider of the Year 3 times in the 80s and awarded the Whitney Stone Cup for her superior record in international competition. As the Aachen show gets underway this week in Germany, Katie will reflect on when she was a member of the gold medal winning team there at the 1986 World Championships. For many years, Katie has been a sought-after trainer who tells it like it is. And with a strong foundation in horsemanship, she now laments on how and why the sport has changed in the US. Hi Katie, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
You've had so many top riders come through your hands over the course of your career, but it all began with, of course, the basis of a very successful career yourself, and one of the most successful riders in the US, it has to be said now, looking back on all that. But it began when you were very young, didn't it? You got into horses at a very young age.
I did, and I got into horses at an age in America that was unspoiled. Whoever rode at that age did it because they loved the horse. They loved to fox hunt. We loved to ride bareback. We loved to spend all day with the horse. Not just coaching has changed, but people have changed. The sport has changed. The idea of what a horse is and what a horse means in competition has changed. And I was very lucky to get into it in an age when I could enjoy everything about the horse and not be spoiled.
Now, it's interesting you say so many of those things have changed, evolved over time, some for the good and some things that we've lost, which really form the basis of good horsemanship. Katie, when you look back at the benefit that you had of that era of growing up in the sport and what might be missing now that informs you as a coach to adjust with those things in mind, I'm interested in that transition.
For example, in America now in competition, there are levels of competition that start at 80 centimeters and then go, I'm speaking of jumpers, not hunters, start at the lowest level. As George Morris will say, it's practically subterranean the way it begins. And I love it because it's true. When I was a kid, you did junior hunters. That was 3'6", and what is that? A meter or more, a little more than a meter. And then if you wanted to do jumpers, you did junior jumpers. But there was not low children's jumper, modified children's jumper, low junior jumper, medium junior jumper. I mean, the way it has been dummied down in today's world, it's amazing that anyone can ride at all. The sport has become for the fearful, talentless amateur. That's what the sport has been dummied down to. And unfortunately, because of money, the fearful, talentless amateur can rise to a certain level. And that's sort of what the sport has become. How far can the amateur go? By buying the greatest horse in the world. It's not like where can a good riding kid go on any horse that comes down the pike. It's just a totally different sport now. And coaches, many coaches have become coaches who just bring along amateur riders and make it easy for them. And, oh, baby, here's a bottle of water. Are you too hot? Are you too cold? Oh, let's get a fan. Let's get someone else to ride your horse because it's too difficult. You know, it's just become a sport for rich, talentless people. And I don't like that. I'm a mean teacher. I make those kids work hard. If they sass me, I take those stirrups off. I still teach like I grew up, where I want the riders to be tough and to appreciate the horse and to learn how to ride every problem. In today's world, the trainers take away the problems. They don't want the riders to have a problem. Every horse has to go out of the barn with earplugs in so that they don't hear or look or spook at anything. The sport makes me sick nowadays. And in America, what's very sad is that we're not producing a ton of great riders. We have all the Irish boys coming over here and riding all the horses and getting all the owners, because we're just producing a bunch of weak amateurs.
How do you think this effect started to happen and pick up the momentum that it did to undermine horsemanship in this country, to if you will, mollycoddle the riders, and for this culture amongst trainers to buy into it, and the parents too? How did that start, and why do you think it kept up the momentum that it has done and taken over the sport to the extent that it has done, Katie?
I remember many, many years ago, we went to France to show, and I probably was just dating my husband, or we had just met, and when we went to France, the dollar was 10 to 1 on the French franc. So a horse from France, a great horse, and there were many great horses in those days in France, priced in French francs, it was 1/10 in dollars. And so horses could be bought in Europe for a short time, for a little while. Horses could be bought by the dollar for incredibly good prices. And people came from Europe with great horses, and then all of a sudden everybody started shopping in Europe. If you had an amateur rider or a junior rider, you got on a plane and went to Europe to find the horse. And for about a decade it was like that. And I think in the beginning it was because the prices were so good. And as it evolved, it became clear that bad amateur riders who had a lot of money could buy really good horses and compete with the professionals. And I think over time, especially in America, I'm not even going to say the rest of the world, even though I have to say the rest of the world is catching up to us now. But in America, rich parents saw a way to buy their children's success. And one thing led to another, and now we're in a terrible place.
And do you see a way out of this trough now to pull us out and produce the riders that we need to international success?
I don't see a way out right now. I think we're going to have to hit rock bottom, and the team and all of us are talking about it and how to get us out of it. But I think in about 5 to 10 years, we're going to have a very hard time putting together a good team. I really think we are.
Yeah, it really is a sad situation when you look at it in terms of the US's position in the international sport.
I agree. You know, you look at McLean, who was the son of a dealer and had a lot of hard times with family problems. You look at Kent Farrington, who was a boy that didn't have a lot of money and worked for different people like Leslie Burr and Tim Grubb, and came up through the ranks just really working hard. And Laura Kraut, who rode anything and everything that came down the pike, and she still can. She can get on any horse and make it go well. We just don't have those riders coming along anymore. We just don't. You know, Beezy, great. Beezy, when she started working with John, and and doing all of his sales horses. She also can ride any type of horse and turn it around to go her way. Those are our 4 top riders right now, and they're always the 4 top riders for the last decade. Once they're gone, I don't know what we're going to have.
Now, what about that next tier down then? I mean, I'm thinking of Reed Kessler, Jess Springsteen, these young girls, some of and Katie, there's a whole tier of those younger girls, mainly girls, that seems to be. Some have gone through your hands as well.
Well, they all have great basics. They all are very good riders. But they have all, or not all, but the ones you've named, they've only ridden the best horses money can buy. In their lives, from the time they were little children, they have only ridden the best horses that money can buy. And that's how you can't compare them to a McLean or a Kent or a Beasley. You can't compare them.
So what happens when they run out of good horses? Does that ever happen, do you think, or have we developed a culture now where we won't allow that to happen because we need them on the team for next year and the future generations?
Well, I mean, it depends on how much money they have, right?
Totally. Now, let's talk about the trainers themselves, the coaches. Now, the difference in the culture there, they are feeding into the culture that you're talking about then, Katie, by enabling and obviously the owners, the parents, to buy these expensive horses. And the athlete, the rider themselves then does not have to have the responsibility that they did. They've got someone to blame. If the horse doesn't go well, they can blame the coach.
Yeah, and like I said, the coaches have learned to try to make it easy for the riders. They want their riders to like the sport. They want their riders to stay with them. They want it to be a nice day at the horse show. You know what? It isn't always a nice day at the horse show. Sometimes you have to work really hard to get through a day. And a lot of these kids, they don't even know what that means.
And the other thing we see often in the hunter-jumper world is that the trainers don't encourage the young riders, young people who are taking up the sport or have got a horse, whatever their situation, they don't want them in the barn to spend the barn time, to learn the basics of horsemanship. How do we stop that decline?
I don't know, but years ago, and I'm not even going to mention the rider's name, a young girl rider had a bad day, and the trainer wanted that rider to, ride another horse and maybe work without stirrups and, pay her dues. And the barn manager said, oh, no, she has an appointment to go get her nails done. And I have to tell you, that is America in a nutshell right there. That is where we're going in our sport in America. And, yeah, it makes me sick. And I don't know a way out of it.
No, there doesn't seem to be an easy solution. I mean, obviously the top riders will always be the role models for the younger generations to come. But do you see the level of dedication amongst younger riders that comes through your hands now? Is there a willingness to learn the basics, the foundation, to do the hard slog, to be the rider that they need to be amongst any, or are they just talented because they have the top horses that money can buy, as you suggested earlier?
Well, I have to say that most of the riders whose families have a lot of money, they don't have the same desire to work at their sport as the kids who grew up without money. And I guess that's maybe the same in everything. I don't know, but I see it as a problem.
Talk about the riders that you do have now. How many do you have, and do you have riders in different countries? Do you see any cultural differences to the younger generation now?
A ton of cultural differences. When you go to Europe, you don't see the numbers of people with a ton of money like in the sport like you see here. Of course, there are people with money, but most of the professionals. We have students in France, and we have people we help in England, and most of the professionals in Europe, a little more down-to-earth, hardworking, into the reality of what it takes to become successful.
And when you cite that as an example, give us some cases where you see the difference back in the collecting ring or back in the barn. Are these riders, are they spending more barn time?
Let me say something else right now that comes to mind. The way the sport has changed. Any of us who love horses, and I would say almost all of us who are successful, love the animal. We realize the care that the horse needs, the confidence that the horse needs, the good program that the horse needs. But we also realize that when you're riding a horse, you're dealing with 1,500 to 2,000 pounds of animal that also needs the strength and the strictness to learn his lessons and be able to perform. Now, the way, when you see the Barnum and Bailey circus go out of business after 150 years because the animal rights activists didn't like the elephants being in the circus, it's happening to our sport too. The animal rights activists, don't want to see a prick of blood on a horse's side. They don't want to see someone lay a little tiny stick on the flank of the horse. These are people who know nothing about horses or training horses. And unfortunately, and I'll say this, and you can repeat it, our FEI, our guiding federation, has given in to the animal rights activists. Instead of standing up for our sport and saying, you know what, the horses you see at this high level, they are treated like angels. And personally, I've said myself, I'd love when I die to come back as a horse in my barn because the care is so outstanding. And in most of the top barns, the care is outstanding. And if a horse needs a slap with the stick or needs a prick with the spur, that's all a part of the training. And unfortunately, we're letting the animal rights people, again, I'll say, who know nothing about horses, dictate how our sport has to be run. And it's all going in my opinion, it's all going in a bad direction. Horses, if they're going to be in sport, when you think of horses doing for mankind, what horses have done for mankind throughout history, the history of mankind, as farm horses, riding horses, mail delivery horses, whatever horses did for mankind throughout history, it was because they were trained to do so. And now animal rights people are telling us we're not allowed to train horses. And so where is the sport going to go?
Well, you mentioned the FEI, who obviously are responsible at international level. Can you think of anything that the national governing bodies, the national federation, that can do to help the sport turn around to what is happening to it now at all levels, Katie?
A friend of mine said, have you ever been whipped in the face by a horse's tail when the horse was swishing at a fly? And if any of us have been, it brings tears to your eyes. It cuts your face. It just the swish of a tail hurts. And what we have to realize is that horses have a different sensitivity level. They don't have human skin. They, in order to be trained, need to be trained in certain ways. And I think national federations have to educate people, not allow animal rights activists to tell people how they should think about any animal.
I'm going to ask you finally, Katie, do you think the owners are driving the sport, or is the sport itself driving itself, or are the riders driving it? Which is coming first, the horse or the cart?
I don't think the owners as such are driving the sport. However, money. And it's not just money from the purchase of horses. It's money for the prize money. It's money for the television. Money is starting to drive the sport. And although as a professional horsewoman, I see great benefits for myself in the rising price of horses because I'm very good at finding horses for a good price and training them and then selling them for a big profit. So money in the sport is good in a way, but in another way, I think it's going to allow some bad factors in, like animal rights. You know, when the television is right there, zooming in on the spur of the rider as he's trying to get the horse to go through the triple combination or over the water jump. It's just, we need to educate people as to what good care the horses get, not that they're having cruelty put upon them.
Good points, Katie, as always. I'm going to ask you finally what you most value about spending a life in sport, in horse sports.
What I most value my love of the animal. I just love horses. I ride every day. I just love to train horses. I love to take an animal whose natural instinct when he's afraid is to run away and make him so confident and so loving that he'll do whatever I ask him to do. I just love horses.
And if you had to give a message to young girls listening to this program about coming into the sport and what they should expect and how they should educate themselves for a career with horses, what would that be?
I think their goal should be to take whatever horse they are lucky enough to get to ride. Their goal should be to get a communication with that horse, to have the ability to make that horse do whatever they ask him to do. And we get away from that in people who buy horses for high prices. They think the horse should just do it for them because they paid a lot of money, when actually their communication with the animal and their relationship with the animal is what can gain success. And so any young rider coming into this, I would say, you get on that horse, and through a long time and spending hours with the horse and getting a good education and basics, how to use your leg, how to use your reins, see if you can take that animal and get him to do what you want him to do.
Very good advice, as I would expect, Katie. Thank you very much indeed for coming on the program and sharing your thoughts on the current climate.
All right. Well, thank you very much also.
And you can find other discussions on coaching on our website, along with many other conversations around the world of women's sports at wispsports.com. You can also join in the conversation on our Facebook page or on Twitter and Instagram. Just look for Wisp Sports. Or if you prefer to share your thoughts via email, you can reach us at info@wispsports.com. This podcast is available for download from the iTunes podcast store to any podcast app, so you can listen to the show on the go. We have more than 680 episodes here across 25 unique shows with an audience of over 1.3 million. And we cover every sport and every topic that affects women in sport. This program is brought to you by Equestrian Collections. Be sure to visit them at equestriancollections.com. I'm Chris Stafford, and until the next time, thank you for listening.